You're making me want a sweet though. I can hear the candy. Now I want one.
I know. I chew these little, I don't even know what they are. They're just candy. We try to pretend like they're not, right? These whatever breath mints, but they're orange sour. They're like sour orange. So they give me this little tiny zing every now and then. And I throw a bunch in my mouth when I'm usually live and doing stuff. And it's terrible because it's like listening to people chew and eat when you're right up close to the microphone. It's horrible, but
I think, don't people like the ASMR thing?
I think so too, right? That's totally a thing on here.
You should just play. I would lean into it and just be like, welcome to this week's guest, and then just, do it more. I'm not quite sure how that would work, but
just roll the mints around in my mouth the whole time.
For 2 or 3 minutes and then just dive in. I like that. I'm sure there's definitely a niche market, right?
It's a great intro, right?
Can you imagine?
I'm so excited. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here with you as well.
So we usually get started going into the past and talking about all sorts of different things. And I always forget to remind people ahead of time, like when we're chatting, setting this up, feel free to share what you want to share, right? Sometimes people aren't comfortable sharing all their stuff, and that's totally cool. But one of the spots that I really like to start in is because on my path and on my journey, it's not a real clear like delineation where something happened and then everything was different and I thought about everything differently after this. But it's definitely a time in my life where I was really opening up to consciousness, opening up to spirit, opening up to energy, all these different ideas and thoughts and experiences. And truthfully, those few years in my life, it was around 2011, 2012, 2013, kind of those years shifted everything for me. It just like cracked everything open for me. So that's where I like to start is what was that time frame or that moment, or maybe it is a very specific experience for you, where essentially you go from reality is this way. Wait a minute, I know nothing. Reality is so much more than this.
So I wouldn't say that I had such a dramatic, like going from one to the other. I've always been very kind of intuitive and sort of like tapped in that way. But I think for me, in the tarot, I'm sure you know about tarot, right? You also read, but like we have like the Tower card, which is that kind of dramatic change, and it can represent, things obviously coming up, etc. I think my years were probably 2016, 2017. A lot of changes happened, a lot of things, and I'm very open about this in my classes and my workshops. In a lot of ways, I wasn't really following my own practice, right? Like I wasn't really doing a lot of the things I knew worked. And I saw that, that didn't work for me. So after a few things happening, I kind of came back to my practice, and I remember just getting this really strong intuitive sense of like, just put one foot in front of the other, listen to your intuition, and just lean into your practice more and more. And over the next few years, I everything kind of opened up in the most amazing way. I wrote books again. I started doing my podcasts again, classes again. And, I would say it was one of those times where I almost felt like my spiritual team or spirit guides, however people want to connect, they were kind of stood there just being really patient, going like, whenever you're ready, we're here if you want to come back. So it was kind of like that, but I would say I've always been very intuitive and kind of witchy in that way. But in terms of like really fully embracing it, and I always joke with my students, I always say like, I learned the hard way not to ignore my intuition anymore. So I don't do that. So, I think I learned the hard way that if you ignore your intuition, you will often see why. So yeah, those are kind of my years, 2016, 2017. And then 2018 was when I kind of just sort of really reconnected with my practice and started like, putting myself out there again in quite a big way. And then I would say just since then, everything's kind of gone up and up and up, which is really nice.
I love that you said, how did you phrase it about your intuition if you're not leaning into it or?
Well, I don't remember what I said now. I think awkward. I should, at least you guys can see that I'm not making notes or anything. I think how I describe it is like my intuition is, so I always joke with people and I always say like, I've learned the hard way, right? So that's now
what I was going to get at is it's like,
yeah.
What were some of those, because I feel the same way where it's like, if you don't want to pay attention, cool. Eventually you're going to pay attention. Like eventually something will get you to the spot where it's almost like I don't think of it. It's like you're forced to, it's like finally you see oh, wait a minute, everything that I've been doing hasn't been working? What were some of those things, if you don't mind getting into it, just simply because I love normalizing the experience for people. Mm-hmm. And the more we share these stories. So like, what were some of those, like, because it's big catalyst moments where you're like, well, shit's not working anymore. Something's got to change.
Yeah, there's an expression I love, and in English it translates to: first the universe will whisper, if you still don't listen, it will speak, and then it will shout. And then I kind of always add on to people, I always say, and if you still don't, it will probably throw things. So, you know, I always like to sort of think of it now like, okay, I've seen what happens when it gets to speaking and shouting. So now I'm going to listen when it whispers, or, you know, when I first get those nudges. A few of the things to share. So, you know, I was living in London. I just wasn't happy there. Nothing terribly bad. I just didn't feel at home. You know, it wasn't like home for me. It was a city I lived in. I was working in like corporate PR and, you know, media stuff. I was always doing readings, etc., you know, kind of discreetly, but I just wasn't fulfilled in it. Like, it just didn't feel like I was meant to be doing this. And I remember there was one particular time, I had written a book called Spell Work Secrets to Manifest Your Desires. Okay. All about obviously how to do spell work and magic and develop your intuition. And I was a contractor, I was a freelancer at this agency. So I would take my laptop in every day and, like, you know, go in and do my work in the corner and whatever. They left me alone. It was great. There was one particular time where I was feeling kind of conflicted. I was thinking, I just don't want to do this anymore. I want to go fully into my readings and magical work. And I, you know, also want to sort of, you know, shift and maybe move. Anyway, I'd finished writing the book, and I remember saying to my spirit guides, just let me know when this is ready and I'm ready to make the jump. Anyway, a few days later, I went into the agency and I was working away on the same laptop that's over there, actually. Probably signed to get a new one. Anyway, typing away. Now, keep in mind two things. One is it was my laptop and it was not plugged into the system, okay? I'm typing away, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, someone quite senior in the agency is stood by the printer and just goes, who's printing out spell work secrets? I just went, what? Anyway, they were like, why is this coming out of the printer? Now, keep in mind, this was like a media agency, right? I don't know how this happened on a practical level. I had never even used that printer with my laptop. It had obviously done something, right? It synced or something. And I remember just going over to the printer and going, I'll take that. Anyway, sat back down and I was like, whoa, spirit, okay, I heard you. So that was definitely one of those signs where I'm like,
Joseph, it reminds me of that scene in Fight Club where his boss calls him into the office because he's printed off the rules for Fight Club, and he starts reading the rules off to him. Do you remember? Have you ever seen that movie? Do you remember Fight Club?
It's been a while, but I do remember the movie. Yeah, that's very funny. Like a witch, I like it. Like a witchy Fight Club, I like it. Nice.
So what did that start?
Kind of like, well, it really started me kind of listening more and, you know, just kind of coming to terms with the fact that, like, I feel like when you have a calling like that, and when it's important for you to share your work and you know, fully go into something, I feel like you owe it to yourself to do that. I do a lot of coaching with my clients as well. And I often tell people, like, if you have a dream or an intention or a goal, like, you owe it to yourself to take it seriously. And I think that was the first kind of time, that was the first instance in a while, certainly in a few years at that time, that I really saw quite a magical thing happen. You know, keep in mind, like, I had never used that printer before. I had never, you know, why would I be printing that off at work? I didn't want them to know I was writing a book on witchcraft. And it was so interesting because obviously there was a practical explanation. I don't know what that was, but spiritually, I felt like that was the universe really going, you're ready, you know, kind of, I'm being called. So, you know, it was that. And then there was another time where I was living in London and I'd been to Ibiza. I'd been coming here since I was a child. So this has always felt like home to me. But I had gone over twice and spent, you know, quite a long time there. And I just thought, yeah, I need to move. I just knew I was meant to come over. But it can be scary, right? Leaving the city you're living in, etc. Same thing. Asked for a sign. Probably the next day, there was a clock on my wall in my living room in London. This had never happened before in the 4 or 5 years I'd lived in that apartment. The clock fell off the wall. Like, just went,
it's time.
And I remember, exactly right. I was like, couldn't be more literal, could it really?
Right.
So I was like, But, so a few things like that. I also kind of joke with people about like, I wasn't about to ignore those, right? Like those were two very kind of, pay attention. So there was things like that. I could go on, but just, I guess to sum it up, like I had just been in a place where I felt like it was time for me to really not only lean into my practice more, but also kind of share what I do with people. I mean, the reason I called it Magick for Modern Life is because my whole thing is like, you've got the magic within you. It's about you learning how to use it in a way that actually works for you. Like I often tell my students, magic is not just what you do at your altar. It is you. You are the altar, right? You are the sacred space in your life. So learning how to do spell work and magic and whatever that means for you, learning how to read tarot and intuitive work, it's ultimately about honoring yourself and your life. Because, I mean, I didn't actually plan this, but this is perfect timing. Like the card behind me, the magician card, the infinity symbol above his head always connects to infinite possibilities and potential. And I sometimes think like, there's so much we don't know about life, right? There's so much we don't know about our own potential and the magic we have within us. We owe it to ourselves to like take it as far as we can take it,
Dude, I'm so freaking excited that we're talking.
Oh, me too. It's nice to meet you. And I have to say, a few of your videos have come up on my FYP. You speak so powerfully. I really like your style as well.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Of course.
So one of the things that sparks right off the conversation, I'm going to make a couple of bullet points that hopefully we can remember to come back to, because I'm going to go back a little bit. But you moved, and do you feel like when you moved, it opened up something else and like took you into
everything?
Okay, good. So we're going to come back to that. I want to talk about that. And then one of the things that I really have started to both just like fully understand, well, maybe not even fully understand, because when in the hell do we ever fully understand anything, right?
Right.
But at this point, more and more understanding about correlation and connection to childhood. My whole path is really about unpacking and putting those pieces together. I talk about it a lot through the lens of like programming and the programs that we got through childhood and how we have to bring those subconscious programs up into the conscious before we can shift them and change them and recreate the reality that we want. But what I'm realizing for myself and then a lot of the people that I've talked to, and especially on this podcast, it's been coming up more and more, I feel like because of the traumas and the experiences that I had growing up in childhood, in some ways, I get like there's a component to it that is very much like explainable by the nervous system and the fight or flight response, and from like the mental health therapeutic side of things, where if you're going through traumatic experiences, then you're more attuned to your surroundings and you're more, you do what I mean? You're just more on point because you're in survival all of the time. But it feels like because I have that experience and I'm so in tuned to my senses, from a survival standpoint, it also tunes me into all of the extra senses that exist, all of those other frequencies and vibrations. And so I see the two things really in conjunction with one another in a really beautiful way, where some people may not have had as much trauma as I have had, but that means that they didn't have as much access to all of those frequencies that I have, or all of those channels, or whatever we want to think of them as. And then coming forward into where I'm at today, being able to heal through all of those things, it's like all of that information now is way more available, way more, like I feel like I have more access to the spectrum of information that we have access to because of the trauma that I experienced. So another way to put it is a lot of what, these extrasensory, and again, I hate using words like abilities or gifts because I feel like we all just have them. I don't feel like it's anything like special, even though I think we're all incredibly special. So long story short, do you feel like that also, is that something that you can relate with, where you feel like
100%.
You had some really significant traumas that led up to this spot in some ways?
So just to go back to something really powerful that you said about sort of, certain times in your life, I guess, tuning you into other things. I have a tattoo there that says poison into medicine, and it's a Buddhist concept that I just love. And the idea is that, dude. Oh, you know that
Keep going.
One.
I love it.
Nice. Okay, so it's from Nichiren Buddhism. I've been chanting for like years now, and one of the things I love about that expression is or that phrase rather, is, even like the poisonous stuff in our life can become medicine for us moving forward, and it can allow us to become even greater than we would have been had it not happened. And I remember talking to a therapist friend of mine, and I said something about, oh, wouldn't it be great if we could just erase all the trauma? And she said something that just completely changed my perspective. She said, so you want to be able to erase the trauma, but you still want to keep the benefit of the lessons and the growth. And I was like, exactly, whoa. So, my point called out. So I completely agree with you. And I think that it's how you frame things. I say this on TikTok a lot, but I also, live by this. And I try and teach my clients and students a lot, is like, you get to choose the role that you play in your life. So maybe 5, 10, 15, 20, however long ago, many years, you may have had trauma. That in no way means anything bad about you. And it actually can be, if you choose it to be, it can actually be a gift. I don't like the phrase lesson. I think that's a bit punishing, and it sounds a little bit too leaning in towards almost like some kind of guilt.
Yeah.
I think there can be tremendous gifts from looking back at that time. And, first of all, saying, wow, how strong I am that I made it through those times. Also, a lot of self-praise, like really acknowledging yourself and how far you've come and how well you're doing. And, I always say to people in workshops, like, just take a moment and think about all the things you've been through in your life. And I want you to sit in the celebration of it. Stop dismissing how powerful and strong you are. And the reason I bring this up is I think a lot of people sometimes can get, certainly online, I think people can get a little bit too addicted to the identity of being broken, when actually, like, that you're not broken, you're powerful and strong, and actually it's how we frame that trauma. And then in terms of like, do I think the same about me? I wouldn't say it was directly related to trauma, but I always felt very different. I don't know if that's the right word, but I always felt very intuitive and like tapped in and witchy. And I remember genuinely being a bit like, do you guys not all have this? Like, I remember, being a bit like, sorry, does that not happen to everyone? So kind of like that. But I think I look back at certain periods of my life, definitely, that were challenging. And I'm so grateful for my intuition, because in many ways it completely, it changed my life, but it also allowed me to navigate through some very tough times. So to answer your question, yes, I think that we all have very powerful intuition and very powerful gifts. I think I explain it in my programs. I explain it like, think of like a singer, right? Some people can naturally sing really well, but with training, everyone's voice can improve. So it's kind of like the same with intuition and gifts. I think that some people kind of maybe develop them because of experiences, and other people sort of choose to. But I feel like whether you develop them through trauma or choice, it's still there.
So one of the things that you just said was we get to like choose our roles in a sense. The person that associates, or it's not the verbiage you use, but it's like becoming so in the victimhood of being a victim that it becomes the identity that you wear. And for me, what that looked like was I got so attached to like the healing and to the unpacking and to the going into the shadow and into processing, because it was the thing that was pulling me out of survival. It was, I was healing and I was improving and life was getting better. And it really, in a sense, felt like it became my identity. I became so just kind of obsessed with all of it, to the point where I think it very much kept me in traumas and in wounds and in areas of my life that I didn't need to be in any longer. I think there's components to the healing where, yes, it's important to like fully understand and grasp and have a complete picture. But at the same time, man, I think that it's a slippery slope. I think it's one that I'm just learning now to kind of acknowledge and recognize. There's like a time for healing, there's a time for integration, and then there's a time for living and a time for experiencing and a time for just allowing yourself to be. Do you feel like you've had to navigate some of those periods where you had to shift from one identity to another in order to really evolve and go into the next phase?
100%. I'm just looking for something to show you because what you just said is so powerful. And I completely agree with you more than I can say in words. I think that it's absolutely about what you said. It's about processing what needs to be processed. It's about acknowledging it, but not getting stuck in it. And what I see in a lot of people, I mean, I do readings and coaching for people from all walks of life around the world. And one of the kind of common things I see in a lot of people is, you know, essentially speaking, we're all kind of the same, right? Like we all just want to be happy and loved and safe. It's not that deep, right? It's not that different, I should say.
Yeah.
I'm actually looking for a specific tarot card I want to show you because there's a really nice lesson about exactly what you just said. So excuse me for looking down, but I just really want to show you. You're like, interview's over, beep. Blocked. Here you go. I should have prepared it because that would have been what you just said was so powerful. But, you know, the world card is exactly about what you just said. Like one of the meanings I love so much about the world card is integrating lessons that you've learned and kind of calibrating to them and then moving to the next phase in your evolution and your identity. And I try and really live by this as much as I can at this time. And I also try and teach this to people is, you know, you are not what happened to you. You're also not your trauma. It's present for you, of course, and that's held with compassion and respect. But, you know, it's about, like you said, going to that next phase in your identity and really thinking about like the power of your self-concept. And if you think of yourself as someone who, let's say a person says, people don't like me. There may have been experiences that made you feel like that, but that's not true, right? Like there are how many billions of people, you cannot possibly say everyone doesn't like you. But what people will do is get stuck in that identity and then they kind of create ways to make it true or look for reasons to make it true. If somebody says that in like a session with me, we'll do a reading on it, but, you know, I'll ask them questions like, so if, you know, what's a new way that you can think about this and how can you step into that version of you now? Because the world card is, the reason I love this so much is because it's about like going to that next phase in your evolution. Another example that comes to mind is like, I was talking about this earlier on a video, and I think yesterday I was doing a reading for someone, and I kept getting this message coming through, which was, don't get addicted to the wanting of it, go into the being of it. And I think it can kind of be the same like with maybe healing. People get so addicted to this idea of like, I'm healing. I have a joke with a lot of my students. We talk about this phrase, right? I'll say, what does working on yourself even mean? No one is going to give you a certificate and go, well done, you've worked on yourself enough. You know, like here's a Amazon gift certificate.
Right.
That would be amazing, by the way. I would like one very much.
Those, right?
We should email them and be like, please see the attached interview. We await your reply. Imagine millions of like dollars worth of certificates. Anyway, but like my point is like, you know, this idea of like, I'm working on myself, it can keep you stuck in this identity of like, I'm a bit broken and flawed and like need to be fixed. I try and tell my clients, you know, you can absolutely be, let's say, working on an issue or a part of your life while still showing up powerfully and, you know, focusing on self-care and, you know, having a great day. Like I always try and remind people, don't forget you can still have a great day and work on those things, experience pleasure and fun and lots of good things. It's not a case of like pausing your happiness or pausing your pleasure or fun. And like you said, kind of maybe going into it a little bit too much.
So much so. And I like the way that you phrased it around like, if I'm always working on myself, if I'm always focused on healing and even that, like that was my verbiage for a long time. I'm healing. Well, that indicates that there's something wrong with me. And I had to get to this spot where I recognized, and all of this for me, like this moment, this shift, this going from like one theme to a different theme, I think is such a significant thing for people. And it happens a bunch of times in all these kind of little different moments. But what I really saw, all of those little moments and shifts where you start to go towards something else for yourself, it's like this huge act of self-love, even in the small little ones that don't really seem like it. And when I started to like reflect and look back and be like, oh, wait a minute, I can see these as acts of self-love now. And then I looked at like the last 10 years of my life and I was like, holy shit, I think I really love myself. I've been doing a whole bunch of stuff to love myself. I might actually be like worthy of something here. And that's when everything got really interesting, because I started to recognize, wait a minute, what am I healing? There's nothing wrong with me. I'm worthy of unconditional love just as I am today. Like my mantras for a really long time, I was scripting out for like 2 years over and over and over and over and over again, journaling. And they were really simple things like I'm innocent and I'm pure and I'm worthy of unconditional love. Just really basic core things that I would tell my 4-year-old self. Like if they were going to wake up in the morning and somebody was going to come over and pick them up and give them a big hug and a kiss and say, I'm so happy you're awake today. These are all the things that I want you to know about yourself. That's what I was scripting, really basic things about I'm worthy of unconditional love. All these kind of things that really felt at the time when I started the process, I could grasp the idea and the concept because I was starting to put some of those pieces together. Whereas if I would have tried to do that 5 years prior, or sometimes, even like a year prior, it would feel really bullshit to me. I had to have some little thing that clicked where suddenly I realized, wait a minute, I kind of believe these are true. So I'm going to start writing them out. And then what's taken place ever since then is it feels like that reprogramming, where I went from that phase of life where I thought that there was something wrong with me that I needed to heal and fix. And then I had all of these stories around why. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I had stories from even before I was born why I was broken, because I went back into my parents and the epigenetics and the ancestral things and all of these explanations for why I was the fucked up version of myself that I am today. Little did I know that, truth be told, all of that was just the illusion. And the truth was, I'm so loved from all of these generations. I have all of these things. I have all of this stuff. I'm just really worthy as I am today. But that journey and that process really involved breaking it down into those like little simple phrases and then just repeating them over and over and over and over and over again, as if I was reprogramming that little boy who heard the opposite. I was countering all the narratives in my head that I had my whole life because of the experiences that I had had.
That's beautiful. I that's so magical what you just said, especially about when you said, like, I'm so glad you're awake today. I was just thinking, oh, that's so lovely. I completely agree. And I think, a big part of my work is self-love. And I run a program called the Confident Reader Mastermind, and it's all about like how to read tarot with confidence and how to build your intuition and your skills. And we do a lot of work in the program about self-concept, self-love, and self-worth. And a few people have been like, I had no idea this was in here. This is amazing, but why is it in a tarot program? And the way I explain it is like your self-concept and your self-love and your self-worth are the foundation for everything. And actually, I completely agree with what you said about, you made a beautiful point about self-love. And I saw something on TikTok the other day, and it was a young lady, and she said something so powerful. She said, one of the biggest forms of self-love is actually doing the hard things. And I completely agree. I think that there's a type of self-care that's not talked about enough, and it is like doing the hard stuff. I don't mean unpleasant stuff that you don't want to do, but I mean, like, for example, going to the gym when you don't want to, working out, committing to a goal, showing up for yourself, pushing through that kind of limited version of yourself. And that to me is like the foundation of building self-trust, because, the relationship you have with yourself is the foundation of everything, isn't it? And how I try and explain it is like, imagine you had someone in your life who was like, oh yeah, I love you, babe. But then like never did what they said they would do. I mean, we've all probably been with people like that, but anyway, not the point. Different podcast. Imagine, for example, like someone in your life is saying, I love you, blah, 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 but then they never do anything for you, never support you, and never follow through. Most people do that to themselves. I certainly did for years. I would try and say, I love myself and all that. But if I looked at how I was treating myself, it was not mirroring someone who loved themselves. And same as you, a huge shift for me was in like, treating myself with that love and respect and care and like a practice I do most evenings. I'm not going to say I do it every evening, but most evenings I sit down and I like think about the best things that happened that day and what I'm proud of myself for. And I'll often say out loud, I'm really proud of you for doing that. Well done. I'm really proud of you for doing whatever it is. Like, I'm proud of you. Well done. You're doing really well. And it's incredible what that does inside of you, because it takes it, I think, from an idea into you embodying it. Because anyone can just kind of go, I love myself, right? But, it's interesting because I think it's like what we were talking about earlier, saying it versus being it.
So the spot in the middle there where you're talking about the act of showing up for yourself over and over and over again, even in the hard stuff, to me, the way I 100% agree. And I really think it's a huge issue for people. And for me, it was framed around discipline, where I had to be disciplined in order to do these things. And I had such that was I don't even remember where I don't think that's what I came up with. I think I heard somebody talking about it or describing it that way, or, self-discipline. And I had such a negative association with the word discipline that it was like, the last thing I'm going to do is be disciplined because it's somebody telling me what to do. And I mean, ask my wife, if she tells me to do something, it's 100% guaranteed I'm not going to do it simply because she told me to do it. But if it's like something that I need to do anyways, or do you know what I mean? It's so funny how ingrained it is in me.
I completely understand what you mean.
So I had this weird relationship with discipline. And eventually, again, I saw discipline as an act of self-love. And I saw it all through the lens of programming, where it was like, I have been telling myself these things, and I have been seeing my world through the lens of what I've been telling myself. And it's all bullshit. And I can fix that if I'm just disciplined enough to show up for myself every single day from the lens and perspective of, I'm worthy of unconditional love, I'm innocent, I'm pure, just these really basic things again, right? And I love that you talk about how making those shifts. Wait a minute, there was a spot there too towards the end. I think I lost it. There was another spot where I wanted to highlight what you were talking about, but I think it's such a huge thing. And whatever it is for people that, and I think using the parables of like going to the gym, or, we all obviously know, quote unquote, what our body needs when it comes to food. And yet we still give it things that it doesn't need. Like, we know the things that we need to be doing and we're not doing them. And I think it comes from a place of, it's like the opposite of self-love, which is like self-loathing, self-hatred. You have such little regard for yourself based upon how you see yourself and how you were programmed to see yourself in all of those kind of ways, that it's like, why would I show up for myself? I'm not worth it.
Totally. I mean, something that comes up for me that I'd like to share is some of the work I do with clients is always around like self-talk and how it affects your self-concept. Think about the word discipline, okay? It often can also create guilt and shame. You receive discipline in the form of a punishment. If you're at work, I don't know if you guys say this in America, but like over here, people say you had a disciplinary meeting. Mm-hmm. So the word discipline is used as a punishment word.
Yeah, you're in trouble.
So that's how powerful words are, right? Words cast spells. I like to reframe that word and say, giving myself the gift of. So you imagine, for example, one of your goals was to go for a 30-minute walk every day. That's one of mine, so I'm trying to like use myself. But imagine go for a walk every day, right? Because it's good for you to get your steps in, etc. If you say to yourself, I have to have discipline and go every day, it can create this like tension inside of you that if you don't do it, you've failed and you're bad. And also, it's some kind of self-punishment. I've got to have discipline. It just doesn't sound nice. If you say to yourself, I'm giving myself the gift of going for that walk every day because it's good to get my steps in, it feels good to move my body, and it helps me to decompress, you've immediately shifted your associations with not only what you're doing, but why you're doing it.
I love that one. I think that's such a good, the reframing of that too. I'm giving myself a gift, and I can see it. Like when you were talking about going for a walk every day for 30 minutes, I did this. I had a friend of mine at the beginning of the year who was doing, gosh, I can't even remember what it's called now. It's one of those like workout challenges that you do, 75 hard or something, I think it is, where you've got to do so many things every single day for 75 days. And it's a lot of, it's a lot of work, but I wasn't interested in pushing myself in those spaces. And because I used to do all of those kind of things where it was like, oh, if we're going to do something for 75 days, then we're going to do it really, really hard. Right.
Yeah.
And I just destroyed my body. And I got to the spot where I love my body so much that I'm not going to do that. So I opted in to do yoga every day because yoga has been such a gift for me. And what I realized was, if I set it up to where it was like, okay, I've got to get the calendar and then I've got to do 60 minutes every day and I've got to make sure, if I get all like controlled about it, is immediately when I fell. And so what I did was I just told myself the only expectation was that I had to do yoga every day. For how long, in what way, when. Do you know what I mean? I just let myself go in regards to it. Eventually along the way, I found a really good practice that felt good, and I found a rhythm, and then it was a thing. But in the beginning, it was like sometimes I would roll my yoga mat out, sit down on it while I'm on my phone, pretending to be like I'm relaxing because I'm so stressed in that moment. But I did yoga that day. Sometimes it was like a full, hour-long beautiful session. But no matter what it was, just giving myself the gift. I love the way that you've reframed that. Just giving myself the gift of doing this thing helped so much. And now it's like this beautiful part of my day where I just get to do yoga every day.
I love yoga, and you've inspired me to start again. So I'm going to do that. But I think that, it's so important the way that you talk to yourself because, excuse me, think about another one I often like to use is I will never create a to-do list. Yes. I find that so I'm out. No, thank you. What I do is I call it an abundance steps list or a success steps list or a prosperity list, right? Or so, whatever it is. But like, for example, the other day I don't want to say I had to, but I needed to film some videos for my program, do some podcasts and other things. And I had this moment of like, ooh, I'm feeling like there's a lot to do, which there was, right? But at the top of the page, I just wrote success action steps. And immediately it just made me go, yeah, these are success steps. I'm doing the things I love to do, and this is creating more of what I'm doing. There's no have to here. I wonder I'm Capricorn. I wonder what sign you are, because I have the same thing you do, where if I have to do something, immediately I'll go, no, I don't. Right. So I get it. Trust me. I can remember at school, I don't know how old I was, but one of the teachers said something like, you will take your books out and turn to page, whatever it was. And I was the only one who went, how do you know? Like, it was so, I was like, don't say you will. So I completely get it. I have the same thing with myself, right? But like, even earlier, I had one more podcast to record, and I just caught myself going, I don't have to do this if I don't want to. I had to kind of say to myself, it's okay, just do the podcast. So obviously I did it, but I get it. It creeps in. But I think it's how you talk to yourself, and it's also reframing it as a gift for yourself, why you're doing it. And then I like to also add in a lot of self-praise, really like spending time for yourself saying, I'm proud of you. Well, I do that sometimes in sessions or in workshops. I'll invite people to just put their hand on their heart and just say to themselves out loud, I really love you. I'm so proud of you. Well done. You're doing amazing. And to just take that moment and because think about it, right? We acknowledge the importance of praising children and celebrating their steps, their accomplishments. We acknowledge the importance of praising, puppies or small animals, right? At what point do we just go, and you no longer need that? It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's like, you probably need it more as an adult, in my opinion.
I sure think so. Yeah, I think at some point you get to the spot in life where it stops. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's definitely, it's almost in conjunction with graduating high school, going to college, and then it's like, at some point, all of those things that we get congratulated for disappear. And then it's like, I think that's a really, really good point. I wanted to talk about, what were some of the
timer
things,
goes off.
It totally does, right?
Like an alarm, and you no longer deserve praise. Beep. No, it's completely, it's the opposite. I wanted, if you don't mind, just quickly jump in. And before I forget, and just say, I think that it's so important, like, to really nourish yourself in that way. Mm-hmm. An exercise I often give my clients is I'll ask them to sit down and think about, what are some things you would really like someone else to tell you? For example, it could be, I'm proud of you for doing that. Well done. You got through it. You did that. Whatever. Like, just get clear on what you would like someone else to say, and go to the mirror and say it to yourself and watch what happens, because that's another way of really deepening your self-love and self-trust, is like giving yourself that gift of telling yourself, I'm so proud of you. Well done. You did amazing. I often will say to clients at like the start of a workshop or a private session, I'll say, so before we start the reading, what's something that you'd like to celebrate about yourself today? I cannot tell you how many people cry.
Yeah.
In a nice way, obviously. I'm not like, in a nice way. And yeah, I want to make them cry.
Yeah,
but, yeah, you will be proud of yourself.
15 seconds, tell me now.
Yeah, love yourself. like a self-esteem boot camp. I wonder if that could work. Anyway, but, people will often... Could be anyway, but people will often have an emotional moment, and I'll just say to them, like, this is a safe space for you, so you're welcome to let whatever wants to come up, but I would really like you to tell me something you're proud of yourself for. And so many people will just say, people will tell me things like they've achieved loads at work, but they've never once actually acknowledged themselves, or they've moved, or they've been through a huge thing, or they've done a big launch, or they've done whatever it is, huge things, and then they'll just, or any, meaningful stuff, and they'll just say, but I haven't actually taken the time to celebrate myself. And I'll often say to them, we're not going to jump over this part. Let's sit in it. Tell me why you're proud of yourself. And it's amazing what that can do. So I would encourage everybody watching and listening to start doing that to yourself.
I think that's amazing. I think it's such a beautiful thing. I want to go, I need a list of things that I want to talk to you about. We're probably going to have to do another podcast at some point, but
a part 2.
There's a spot there where, because I'm 100% on board with everything that you're talking about. And I think that, because I can hear some people in the chat, there's a spot where you're going from like the stories that you're telling yourself to the stories that you want to be telling yourself. And it's really hard to believe that those things are true. So it's like giving yourself praise and acknowledging these things, and like all of these little phrases that you and I have been talking about that we kind of use to reflect self-love back to ourselves. Mm-hmm. It's like, what do we do at that moment where we're trying to shift from those negative self-talks into the positive self-talks when we don't quite believe it? We might believe in the practice of it, but we don't believe, like we're struggling to, it's hard to say I'm worthy of unconditional love when I see all the reasons why I'm not. So I'm still in that spot where I'm trying to believe, but I'm not quite there yet. What was some of the things that really helped you get over that hump? Or maybe not, I don't know if you've even experienced it.
So the first thing that comes to mind is I would take the pressure off of yourself, and I'm also sharing part of my process, but take the pressure off of yourself about, do I believe this or not? It's kind of like, you know how people will say, I want to have the most magical Christmas ever, and then like one thing happens and they just like flip out because it's too much pressure. I kind of think it's the same thing with asking yourself, do I believe this? Take the pressure off. Don't do that to yourself. And instead, think about choice. Go back to the power of choice. What am I choosing for myself? And you might say, I'm choosing to believe I'm worth it, right? Now, instead, you could say, instead of saying, do I believe it? You could say, how would I be showing up today if that were true for me? Right? If that was true for me, how would I be showing up? And then the more that you, for example, start doing that, you're going to live into it. You're going to become that. It's not going to become a case of, do I believe it? I think sometimes the danger with that is, it's kind of like, imagine if you and I said to each other now, make me laugh, be funny. You can't, right? Ironically, we're both laughing, but you get my...
Yeah.
I think I just disproved my point. That's hilarious. But, it's too much pressure on the self. So an example I got in a meditation years ago, and I teach this a lot in my workshops, is think of it like a train station, right? Your mind is like a train station. You can't control the trains that go past, and you're not meant to, but you can choose the ones you get on. So if the I'm not good enough, I don't believe this, it's not true train comes along, you don't get on that train and go, I don't believe it, how can I believe it? How can I clear this? Then you're just feeding it. You just kind of go, oh, interesting, huh? So I don't believe that's true. That's not my train though. I'm still going to choose to act and live into if that were true for me. So that's something I do myself. I also teach a technique called it's called bridging. So let's say, let's use an example I'm not good enough, right? And you want to believe I'm good enough exactly as I am, which by the way is the truth for everyone, but that's not the point. So you've got two of it here, right? To do such a big jump is going to be quite difficult, especially if you have lots of practice, not being good, feeling good enough, and you have lots of sort of stories to support that. So instead of trying to make yourself jump from one end to the other, start creating a bridge. So you can say, okay, so maybe I don't believe right now that I'm 100% good enough. I'm not 100% there. What if I just started to think about it? What would it be like if I just started to think about maybe being good enough? So you can take the pressure off of yourself and kind of ease into it. That's another way that you can do that.
I love all of those, man. What are some of the spots that you're at in this present moment? What are some of those leading edge things that you're still navigating and working on for yourself because I mean, for me personally, I feel like I love how you framed everything because it's not only confirming, it's validating to hear through the lens of how you're seeing it, the way with which I see it and how much they line up and all of these kind of different things. But I'm at the spot right now on my edge of growth. I think about it that way a lot of times. This just kind of upmost closest part of where it's everything is being creative or created and rolling out, and I'm right there in conjunction with it. And I shouldn't say I have to, maybe that's it. What right there is probably one of them, right? Every time I come up across the I have to, I'm it's the gift to do this thing. It's such a amazing experience to be in such connection with love for myself and self-love, to just be so full of it, to where it's just it just pours out. It's just this amazing feeling. But that spot of what's the leading edge of where you're at right now with some of your growth? Because that also too, that's the really good stuff. But then I've got this leading edge of shadow as well that keeps pace with it, that I keep kind of allowing both to exist, where I get more. And this is terrible verbiage because I don't think of it in this way or at all, but it's not just more evolved, but more enlightened. And at the same time, my shadow's right there being you're full of shit. You're full of shit. You're full of shit.
Aren't we all full of shit though?
Right?
I would just be well, we're on a rock in space. Oh well, you almost just have to kind of go, that would be an amazing t-shirt. We're all full of shit. I love how you say spot. It's quite magical the way you say that. You say oh, there's a spot there. I really like that. I haven't heard that before. Where am I at? I mean, I feel in my own sort of life, I've been through, I would say, quite a few years of I'm going to use the phrase I don't like, but doing a lot of work on myself and really kind of giving myself permission. I'll tell you two things, actually, that might be quite interesting for people watching and maybe listening. I hope they are anyway. I often will say to my clients, if I can be blunt for a second, or if you don't mind me being blunt, and 9 times out of 10, people will say, I love it when you're blunt. That's why I keep hiring you. Please be blunt. I sometimes get this thing where I think I don't want to offend someone. It's a real thing for me about thinking I don't want to hurt their feelings. I've got this slight sensitivity around, I hope I don't hurt their feelings. But what's funny is I can remember years ago, I said it to someone and she was like, do you think I would have been with you for a year if that's not what I wanted? Be blunt, please, just, in our coaching session. So that's kind of a thing for me. And I think how I'm working with it is just acknowledging the fact that that's what people repeatedly seem to really like. So I guess that's quite a big one. I think also,
I've got that one too. I'm right up there with it. It's the people pleasing part that kicks in where I'm because sometimes in sessions, even just in these TikToks where it's like the stuff that feels like is information for them is very blunt. There's a card in, by the way, I don't read tarot cards. I read like regular playing cards. I have never read tarot cards.
Oh, wow.
Or I have no idea.
I would love to learn how to do that.
It's been just the craziest thing. But there's a card in the deck. I use both jokers. So there's 54 cards here. And the joker is blunt. The joker is very much, hey, I love you. You got to deal with this thing. Very much, hey, I'm here with all the unconditional love and support. By the way, you're just shitting on yourself if you're not dealing with this thing. It's always pointing with love at the thing that you're not addressing. With as much love as possible, by the way, you got to deal with this thing that you don't want to deal with, kind of energy. And that part of like being blunt and sharing those things, I think what it really is, because as you were talking about it, I was like, people are so desperate for the truth.
It's really interesting.
Right?
Yeah, sorry,
where it's like we have been lied to so much our whole entire lives, and we've been lying to ourselves so much our whole entire... Somebody's finally going to tell me the truth, and you can feel it with such resonance where it's like, because the bluntness comes from love, and immediately they're like, damn it, you're right. It's the truth.
Yeah. And it's interesting that because, I mean, I don't feel like that comes from a people-pleasing place for me. I think it goes more into a place of feeling like I have to almost, like, it's like I almost feel it's almost like I want to kind of make sure they're okay and like maybe over caretake a bit. And what's interesting is like, again, so many people will say to me, please be blunt. That's what we like. And I completely agree with you, especially in my industry. I mean, I've been coaching since 2012. I'm also, you know, I also do readings for people in my sessions, my workshops, and of course on here. And I do, you know, sessions for people around the world. And what's the most interesting thing for me is like, people love the bluntness because exactly what you're saying. I think there's too much fluff. And I think there's also something I see a lot in, I don't want to be like too funny here, but I think too often people can enable people. And, you know, for example, like, you know, you might see someone doing a reading and they'll kind of go, oh, everything is amazing, babe. You know, completely love this, you know, love and light. That is so unhelpful to people. I joke about that with my clients and they know if they're watching or listening, they know what I'm talking about. But, you know, how I'll often do a reading for someone is like, we'll look at what do you most need to know about moving this forward. I'm not 100% sure why, but I feel quite called to say this next piece. So I'll just trust that it's meant to come through. The way I even do my readings is it's not about predicting anything. It's about empowering the client. And I think when people ask a question like, I use this example in my classes a lot. And I say, imagine someone says, will my book be successful? Well, the truth is that actually depends on you. If you have a bad attitude, you do no promotion and you are being super negative, probably not. No, it won't. And a reading should not be yes or no, because if you say, yes, your book's going to be successful, and they go, oh, amazing, I can just go lay on the sofa, right? So instead of giving your power away to fate, it's about taking responsibility for your life and realizing you are the magic. So how I would phrase it to a client is, let's look at what you can do to make your book successful and or what's holding you back within yourself. So I think that's another piece sort of connected to that is like understanding that it's never about the power being outside of you. It's never about someone or something having the power outside of you. It's always about you connecting to it in yourself.
I'm going to frame what you just said. And I think this is really funny. There's a little part of me. I'm always doing parts work. I'm always aware of like these little bits and pieces inside of me that are chirping off in the background. The metaphor that I really like a lot of times is it's like I'm driving and then the back seat is just full of all these goddamn kids that are trying to get my attention and driving me crazy. And I can identify them all from different moments in my life. And sometimes they're associated with my relationships with different people and the thing, you know, like mom, dad, brothers, siblings, families. And I've just cultivated the relationship with all of them. And I've got this one that keeps chirping off because I love how you and I are continuing to just flow back and forth in conversation. And it's like really, really awesome, and I'm enjoying it. And then there's this other little part of me that keeps chirping up and saying things like, it's so funny. I'm like, I didn't even want to talk about what they were saying. Now I've got another part that's piping up saying, what are you talking about? Stop talking about our parts. All these protector parts. Anyways, see, I get all sidetracked because I get all vulnerable and nervous.
Don't be nervous.
There was a spot there. What were you just talking about?
I was talking about. I was talking about how people need bluntness.
The truth.
This is such a good skill of mine, by the way. When I can't remember when I can't remember what I'm just saying, I'm really good at pulling it out. I was just thinking like, shit, I can't remember what I was just saying. Pull it out, pull it out. So this is like a live example of me going. I was talking about how people like bluntness and they need it, and also how it's actually really helpful and authentic.
There's a back to the part of like the discipline part, because we're coming to that spot where I asked you like the hump, how do we get from the spot where we're trying to believe the things that we want to start believing about ourselves? And I think a little bit of that bluntness in that spot in association with like the discipline, because it's like I had to constantly confront all of these things that I was trying to believe in myself, that I was these things, that I was worthy, that I was this, that I was that. And the way that I see that process now is so much from the perspective of like reprogramming, because all the stuff that you just got done talking about, there's a part of me that sees it through this like whole new lens that's come online lately, where I'm like diving 100% all into everything is just the projection that I'm creating based upon the programs that I'm running based upon. Do you know what I mean? It's this just whole experience where I'm creating my reality. And I've taken like all the beliefs that I have around what that is and just kind of thrown them all away and just kept leaning into what do I want? What do I love? I'm just constantly creating this life, my dream life, because I'm creating it. I'm going towards it. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. Being in the flow of that. And it feels like it's come because of like this reprogramming work, getting to the spot where I finally love myself. Would you feel, I don't know if you would articulate it necessarily that way, but like when you're in the space of like really focusing on caring about yourself and loving yourself, doesn't it feel like you're just kind of creating your dream life? Like it just feels like you're doing the thing that...
I think the two are like an infinity symbol, right? They create each other and they are created by each other. I think that loving yourself is essential for creating your dream life. And by creating your dream life, you also love yourself more. Because, you know, think about like what we were talking about earlier, right? Like giving yourself like the gift, for example, of taking action on your goals, you know, doing things that are important to you. If you do that with the intention of, I'm showing up for myself, I'm showing up for my goals, I'm giving myself the gift of, you know, being kind to myself and, you know, creating these things I want, then that's naturally going to, I guess, give you more, I don't like the word evidence, but it's going to give you more story around that. Do you know what I'm saying? Like if you never take action on your goals and you never do anything about what your dream life looks like, then you're always going to kind of have that as being something in the future. Like, oh, I'd love that to be my dream life, but... So there can be like a feeling of almost settling. I think the more you take action, even in small, like daily ways, right? Like daily little things you can do, you naturally kind of improve your relationship with yourself.
When did you move? I wanted to go back to that. That keeps popping up in my head. I don't want to forget it because I think that there's I moved recently. So I grew up in a part of the country. It's Utah. I don't know how familiar you are with the geography over here.
Little bit.
I grew up there, spent my whole life there, And then we up and moved like 3 years ago to the east side of this country in Tennessee. So it's been a massive, not just move, but where I'm at today. Like if, 3 years ago, you tell me that this is where I'm going to be sitting today, just from a perspective of like, not even just like the geographical location, but at this like place in life and I could have never imagined this. Like this seems so far away from what I could have imagined in just 3 years ago. And so I'm curious if you've had similar experiences and transitions and just really like unforeseen things that you couldn't even imagine in conjunction with the move.
Yeah, lots. I something that comes up for me a lot recently is so a few things I'll share. One is I used to get really shy, like honestly very shy before speaking. If I did a class or not private sessions, but like if it was a class or like something like this, right? I would get quite shy and I would get quite nervous. And it was always stuff like, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I come across in this way? And I would get like I could feel my heart going like that. And just through a lot of my own practices and things, I know that's no longer true for me. I get excited. I get a little bit like, oh, this is going to be great. But I don't get that reaction anymore. And I often have these experiences where I'll be teaching a class or a workshop or like a mastermind call, and I'll have this moment of like, in my mind, I want to go back to that version of myself and probably where that came from. And I want to just give him a hug and go, I promise you, we're going to get through this. And fast forward, you in 5 years is doing this. So I get that a lot. I also, I remember when I was like reading about like tarot and magic and spellwork and stuff, there was no social media. So I was studying a lot, like in my bedroom and like reading books and just practicing and stuff, before social media, right?
Right.
People are watching like, when was that? Whoops. But I have moments sometimes where like, I'll be teaching a mastermind call. I was doing a class the other night and there was people from like, I think 4 different countries on Zoom in this session. And I had this really emotional moment where I wanted to kind of go back to, me in my bedroom and just be like, we're going to teach this online one day to people around the world, right? And it's like, you can't see it at the time, but I always knew I wanted to do this and I always knew I wanted to like work with people in this way, but I have often these very surreal moments where I'm overwhelmed by gratitude, but also like, I wonder if you feel the same. Like sometimes you can feel like, it can feel so much like almost like in some ways a blip, like a second. You almost feel like it was only yesterday that I could never have imagined this, and now this is my new normal. And then in other ways, you can kind of go, God, that was ages ago. I hope I'm making sense, but
I can relate so much.
I have that.
There are times where, like, recently I was on a live. I don't remember. It was like 2-3 weeks ago. And I ended up just having this massive emotional release because truthfully, I couldn't believe like my life. It was just like this unreal, surreal moment where it was like, this is my life right now. And if I go back 3 years, I couldn't believe it. 5 years, no way. 10 years, get the fuck out of town. This place doesn't even exist in my reality.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I was
Totally.
living such a different life 10 years ago. And it's like, It was just a moment for me of like, oh my gosh. Truthfully, and I see it through this lens all the time now, where when I open up to receive unconditional love, it just comes pouring. I live in Tennessee in this rural area, so we get out and hike a lot. I've got a buddy, and we go hiking around, and we'll go to these waterfalls. And my sign, I'm a Pisces, and so I can't get enough of water. If I'm going somewhere where there's water, I'm getting in the water. So we go to these hikes, and as soon as we get to the waterfall, I'm like stripping down to my boxers so that I can go get in the water. And standing underneath some of these waterfalls, it's just like, it's what it feels like sometimes in my physical body when I'm receiving unconditional love from unconditional love, where my body is just like in awe of the amount of love that I have, do you know what I mean? It's just this really insane sensation and feeling. And I just broke down like sobbing for like an extended period of time. And of course, everybody's so cool and loving and so supportive. And like, that's the thing that's blown my mind, is the level of community and safety that gets created in these rooms. It's just bananas to me.
It's amazing. So I completely agree about the water thing. I'm not Pisces. I must have it somewhere, but I'm the same. I also live 30 seconds from the beach. Oh gosh. I want to try and show you. I wonder if I can get the picture up, but this is like a vulnerable thing to share, but I want to. I have a lot of happy cries. I cry a lot in a happy way. And I'll show you an example of what I mean. I wonder if this will show on your screen, but I took this video like an hour ago.
Oh my goodness.
So can you see that?
Yeah, we saw that.
Yeah. And then like pictures like that, right? Like I took that like just before I came to see you, I was walking down there. And I very often will have moments where I will stop and I'll get emotional from a place of like deep, deep gratitude going, oh my God, we did it. I have memories of like 15 years ago walking like about 25 minutes up there through some rocks and going, I'm going to live here one day. I just kind of made that decision. And same as you, I couldn't figure out how to do it. So I get that a lot. And I think that's really important to honor and acknowledge and to, like we were saying, praise yourself. But, to anyone listening to this, if you have a dream and you don't know how you're going to do it, start with loving yourself enough to trust your intuition and just keep taking steps as that version of yourself. Just keep thinking, as the version of myself that has that already, what actions am I doing today? And just keep doing that. The other piece I want to acknowledge was that beautiful comment you made about the safety in the community. What's funny is I hadn't started when I started TikTok 2.5 years ago. I was like, do I have to dance on the video? Like I didn't quite understand it. I thought it was like the dancing thing. So I was like, I'm too awkward to do that and like British. So, but I started it, and I just had this really strong download about like what type of videos to do. I didn't rehearse them. I didn't look into strategy. I just did it. And I was sat over there in my living room, and I just had this feeling of like, I need to do a video right now. Did it. It went viral, and I started going live and all that. And I always say this to the people on my lives, like the regulars. I always say how much I appreciate them. And I do. I mean every word of it, because even the people who become clients and they become students, etc., but also just the people that come into their lives. It's like often I'll see the same people coming in. They'll say hello, we'll exchange some jokes, or we'll say hi to each other. And I just feel very loved and supported on here. It's really, really a beautiful feeling. And I sometimes I did a video, I think it was like a week or two ago, just saying thank you to you guys. I really appreciate you. And people were DMing me going like, oh, that's so nice of you. And I'm like, it's not nice. It's on, like, I'm just trying to be very open with you. Like, I'm incredibly grateful, because again, it's like, think back to before social media, right? When we were like reading about magic, manifestation, the power of the mind, tarot, intuition, very often it could feel quite lonely because there wasn't an online community, there wasn't social media. So now to be talking to, beautiful people like yourself, connecting with wonderful people, on here and different platforms, it's amazing to kind of go, we really are all one beautiful community of people.
I've been doing social media for a long time, and this component of it, this live TikTok component of it, almost feels like a completely different form of social media. And I feel like this feels like the backside of social media. And then there's everything else out there where people are like posting videos and watching them, whatever. In here is where we get to connect and actually be social with one another and connect and create and bond and have all of these experiences. And it's bananas to me because I know it's such a huge thing now, but I had zero awareness of it. It totally feels like a Matrix moment for me where it was like, wait a minute, this thing's been here all along. And it's just been so incredibly beautiful for me because of the people that are here. Do you know what I mean? It's like I keep showing up every single time because I just love the connection with all the people that come in.
I agree with you. I think it's the connection. There's something really magical about it. Like, I remember way before TikTok, I remember when I started my podcast, I was literally just sat on my bed in London, surrounded by crystals, just like talking into the thing. But it's like, I'm laughing because like I could just remember that day. I was like, I'm going to start a podcast. Didn't have any training or like do any technical stuff. I was like, it'll be fine. So I just had like this beautiful kind of witchy setup. I had my candles going, and I was just like doing readings and talking into the microphone. And I, from day one, would always imagine I was talking to people who were in the room with me. And it's funny because people will often say, like, when I listen to you, I feel like I'm there with you. Or it's very magical because my intention was always to feel like I was with them. And people will often say to me, I took you on a walk with me, or I listened to, they'll sort of phrase it like, as in we were there. And I think that's really special. But exactly what you're saying about like TikTok especially is incredible, right? The people are so lovely on here. And it's just, I think it's so magical to think about the fact that you can be in two different countries, connecting with people and having this magical conversation and, sharing, etc. But it's lovely, and I think we need to tell each other how much we appreciate each other more. I had a situation the other day where I took a friend somewhere. They had an appointment about something, and the staff were just incredible. They were so kind and nice and friendly. They were in the type of job they probably don't get thanked enough. And I went over and just, I just said, you guys have been really amazing today. Thank you so much. And they were like, oh, thank you so much. And it made me uncomfortable, like that they thought that was a big deal to be told that. Like in my mind, I'm like, no, you guys have been amazing. You should know that.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of the same on social. It's like, we need to tell people we appreciate each other more.
I completely agree. Let's open it up. If you've all have any questions in the chat, please fire away any questions in the chat, and we'll kind of keep an eye on them and things like that. But I want to keep chatting with you. And what is like not just the leading edge of your like inner work in the process of kind of healing, but what are you creating now that you're really excited about? I feel like when you're really in the flow with self-love and connection, it's a really creative kind of space to be in. So for me, at least, it feels like stuff is constantly kind of, I'm excited about the next thing. I'm excited about the next thing. I'm excited about the next thing because it's constantly unfolding. It's like this dream life is in action now. I'm told, like all the time I'm telling my wife, I'm like, this is the moment where like this is it. This happened. Like, this is the moment. It happened. We're here. Let's fucking enjoy it. So it's like this experience where it feels like it's being creative all along, but it manifests in a whole bunch of different ways. So what's that feel like for you?
Exactly the same. And I love how you made that point. I always try and remind myself, and I tell my students, remember to enjoy the things you have that you've manifested. Don't get into the habit, and I'm speaking to myself as well, don't get into the habit of next thing. There's that phrase that goes around on social media, like you have the things now that you wanted 2 years ago or something like that. I think we all need to really acknowledge, like, enjoy the manifestation. It's not the end point, it's the starting point. So you get the manifestation, that's the start of a new journey. Enjoy it. In terms of like myself, so yeah, kind of the same thing. I can remember wanting so badly to live here, and especially where I live, it's so beautiful. Most days I do have an emotional moment and go, God, I love it here so much, and I'm so grateful. That's a really big thing for me because I can imagine people must be like, why is he crying? Walking around looking emotional, but I'm like, I'm happy. But no, not like that, like a micro moment. But so there's that. But I think in terms of like what I'm creating, do you mean with work, like work stuff?
Yeah. Like what's got you excited?
So I've been, like I said, reading tarot for a really long time, and I'm also trained in a lot of coaching techniques and methods. And I run a program called the Confident Reader Mastermind. I've been doing it for a year now. That has gone so quickly. And we have people that join every single round that I teach. And I teach how to read tarot with confidence, how to give magical readings, how to develop your unique gifts as a reader, and also your style. I'm expanding that to be a longer term program, which is really exciting. It's all about like how to really deepen your connection with your gifts in a way that's very authentic. So you can do readings, whether it's just using tarot or you're blending them with coaching. And then I'm also doing a certification. I'm putting together like a certification so people can actually get certified in it. The reason that's so exciting for me is I think doing readings is one of the most sacred things you can do for yourself and for somebody else. And it's really about honoring that person and empowering them. You know, whenever I do readings for clients, I'll always sort of say to them, like, you know, what was your biggest takeaway from today and how can you live into that? Because I see you as magical. I'll never do a reading for someone and go, you know, oh, it sounds bad, sorry, you know, or or like, good luck, or you know, never going to do a reading where I go, it's not looking good, hun, sorry, next. Like, no, I'll always say to clients, some people do that, it's awful, but I've seen stuff sometimes, and I'm like,
it's such a sacred moment, isn't it? Like, so there's sacred. A part of me that I'm in this spot right now, and I'm constantly thanking myself. Like I'm excited. Like there's a lot of good problems to have. Sometimes we get so wrapped up, or I used to get so wrapped up around like, what if this happens? And what if this happens? And what if this happens? I don't have a solution for this. I don't have a solution for this. And now I'm like, oh, these are good problems to have. I'm at this spot where it's like, this is such a sacred moment. And there's a part of me that feels like, you know, the way that the platform works, it's like, it's not super conducive to being able to slow down and really be present for the moment. Even if it's just a simple, like, here's the seed that you need for this drop, right? Here's the little thing. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I always remind people, and it's like my constant thing where it's like, when it's your turn, you got to really drop into your heart. You got to really be present with yourself. You have to be in the space to receive this love that's coming through in this moment for you. And there's a part of me that's like struggling with continuing to hold that space of it rather than like giving over into the other, and again, this is like the sticking point for me. For me, this is the paradox. So Ram Dass has been one of my like favorite guides on my journey. And he talks about like the paradox where you're stuck between kind of like a rock and a hard spot where you can't see the path through. This is my current one where it's like, I want to continue to hold a container that is respective of what's happening, because I truly believe that it's a gift from unconditional love. But at the same time, it's like, there's so many people that I'm having a hard time getting to everybody and serving everybody in the way that, do you know what I mean? I don't want to speed up that process. So it's a good problem to have. And I'm trying to like just allow myself to be in it, because I know if I can just hold space in the middle and keep loving myself and loving myself and loving myself and loving myself, then the illusion clears and I actually see, oh, here's the thing, here's the thing, here's the thing. There's a whole big answer that's way easier that I can't even see right now, just waiting on the other side of this spot where I feel like I'm stuck. Do you ever get into those spots? Do you feel like, yes, please.
Can I offer you some mindset?
Totally.
I imagine you're like, no, you cannot.
No, I'm 100%.
So I want to remind, can you imagine? I don't want any mindset or guidance. We all have those days. So when you feel like that, I want you to remind yourself, I'm going to tell you something now that is 100% true, and you cannot disprove this, okay? And you have to remind yourself of this. You have made it through 100% of your tough times, bad days, challenges, obstacles, and things you didn't know how you're going to figure out before now. 100%. There's no way you can convince me otherwise, because it's true. So you've demonstrated with undeniable proof that you are trustworthy and capable and resourceful and smart and brilliant. Remember that that is a part of you, that you always have that part of you. Nothing can take that away from you. So if you're ever in a place where you say, I don't know how I can do this, I don't know how I'm going to get through it, you just go, stop, I'm not going to scare myself. I know I'm a smart, capable person. And, you know, I love a list. I love writing lists. I geek out on stuff like that, so hopefully people can relate. But sometimes you can write down a list of all of the things you figured out you got through, you overcame, you achieved, etc. Right? And the most important thing about doing that is you shift your self-concept. So it's not about going, I have a slight issue when people say like, I'm just going to trust the universe. It's like, you are the universe. Trust yourself.
Right.
Right?
You're
Trust
creating
yourself.
this.
You are creating it. Like, it's all you, babe. So, try and remember, like, I feel like, whenever people say I trust the universe, it can sometimes be a little bit of like, I'm giving my power away. But what I often say is, and I say this to myself, I want to be very clear, like when I have those times, I'll just say to myself, you made it through 100% of all of that stuff, but you didn't just make it through, you came out stronger, more resourceful, more experienced, and more brilliant. And actually, let's remember that part of ourselves and connect to them, that part of ourselves, and let's make decisions from that place rather than, I don't know what to do, I'm stuck, I can't find a way. Because the issue with saying I'm stuck is it's like your mind is that powerful, it's going to go, yeah, cool, we're stuck. Okay, great, love that. Right? The mind's not going to go, no, we're not. So you have to see how powerful you are and remind yourself you got through 100% of your tough days, and the stuff you didn't know how you're going to figure out, you did it. So knowing that, you just have to remind yourself what's true, and then that's how you move forward as that person.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
That resonates deeply, and the perspective shift and the realization, because immediately what it brings up and brings forth is some of the fucking days I've gotten through.
Amen.
And some of the moments that I didn't know how I was going to get through this one. And the fact is, like you just said, and I don't think I've honestly ever seen it from this perspective where I've got 100% success rate.
110 probably.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Bananas.
Yes.
I've never seen it that way, dude. Thank you so much. There's some questions I want to get to.
I have to be really, so I can see a little bit of the chat, but I tried to touch the chat earlier and the whole screen, I couldn't see you for about 30 seconds. I was very discreet about it, but if you saw me go, so if there are questions,
you're good. I've got one here. Jamie Day's got, what have you been most proud of discovering about yourself? That's a great question.
For me?
Yes. Yeah, we can both answer these if there's, yeah. You go first.
Discovering about myself. That's a lovely question, by the way. Thank you for that. Yeah, that's really beautiful. That's a gorgeous question. I might take that one. I'm joking. I'll be on my podcast next week. Joking. Can you imagine the most powerful question? You know what? One of the ones for me is that I really like. I'm going to be very vulnerable because I want to do that. I think for a long time I had this slight hesitancy to share all of myself. So I wouldn't necessarily always tell people that I did intuitive work and tarot and like magical practice. I would sort of like think, oh, they might think it's maybe weird. And a lot of people do. I don't really care about that. But I always felt like I had to kind of keep a little bit of that slightly to the side. And in recent years, I've been really not doing that. I mean, I have like witchy tattoos, so you kind of can't hide it now. But my point is like, I think that's a big thing I'm really proud of, is like fully just living into this. And it's who I've always been and what I've always done. But there was that. And I think another piece, something about, I always wanted to do like lots of talks and classes and workshops. It was always something I was very, very drawn to, but I was always very shy. You know, people laugh at me and they're like, you talk all the time. How are you shy? I was shy. So I promise. But I think, you know, just seeing now that shift, I'm very proud of that. Like I can remember, you know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I would have a workshop or a class, and what people didn't know was before I was like, you know, maybe on Zoom or something, you know, starting the session, I would be like quite, it wasn't that I didn't want to do it. It was like my body was just reacting in a way I didn't quite understand. I was like, why is it you know? So now having shifted into a place of excitement about sharing and speaking and all that, I'm very proud of myself for that. And it means a lot to me to be able to also see that, see the sort of the before and after of that. So that's one. And that's a lovely question, by the way.
Those are huge. I love that. The, let's see, the thing that I am most proud of myself, like I am constantly in awe of how much I love myself. Like the level with which I care about myself today, and it just keeps getting like better and better and better. Like I'm constantly just being like, yep, you took a day off and you took a nap. Yep, you decided you wanted to spend like 4 hours in the tub soaking, and that's what you did. Like all of these things that I just keep giving myself permission to do. And I've seen it all through the lens of like, man, I'm just loving myself so much all the time, constantly, to the point where it's like, I mean, it constantly surprises me where it's like, I'm so loving and understanding. It's like earlier you were talking about to-do lists, and I made some shift, and I don't even know when it was, but I went from the idea of I've got a to-do list as opposed to things get done when they're supposed to get done. And the reason I know that that's when that thing was supposed to get done is because that's when it got done. It didn't get done sooner because that's not when it was supposed to get done. It got done right when it was supposed to get done because that's when it was supposed to happen. If we would have tried to make that thing happen any sooner, it wouldn't have happened because it's supposed to happen right when it happens. So that whole concept and idea was like my brain analyzing and looking at like, all those things that I would put on my to-do list, I could let go of and just simply do the thing that I wanted to do in the moment based upon what it felt good for my nervous system and who I am and where I'm at and what feels safe for me. And it's become this just massive act of like, I just allow myself all the space in the world to just live in a safe way. And that, I think, has been the thing that I'm most proud of. And it's given me
I love that you said naps.
Massive things. Naps.
I love that you said nap. I love a nap. Love a nap.
Right?
People who don't nap, I'm like, yeah, we'll change that. We'll change that. I love a nap. Naps are like top tier. Do you know what? I have to tell you something.
Go ahead.
I have to tell you something that's going to be a game changer for you. Have you ever heard of a manifestation nap?
A manifestation nap.
You're welcome in advance. So what you do, so this is something I do. I do this like several times a week, right? So I'll put crystals around me. I'll put a diffuser on with like lavender and frankincense. I'll put some like Reiki music on, and I'll set the intention about maybe manifesting a goal or receiving intuitive downloads, or simply I'll just set the intention of like I'm manifesting deep rest and recharging, and then I'll self Reiki and I'll fall asleep in like this bubble of like crystals and Reiki and like diffuser aromatherapy. And honestly, it is, and I'll get like a neck pillow on, I'll go all out, right? And then I'll just like wake up and be like, what do I want to eat right now? And whatever I want, I'll go and have.
Well, y'all, this podcast unfortunately has come to an end because I've got to go take a manifestation nap. That sounds so wonderful. I love that.
That would be amazing.
This has been so much fun. The next pillow on and
be like, next week. It's been amazing to meet you, by the way. I have to say something as well. You speak really beautifully. Like you have a really beautiful energy when you speak. It's really wonderful to listen to.
Thank you so much. I like deeply appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
There's a memory I'll share with you that doesn't come up often because the like speaking and I mean, podcasting in some sense is public speaking, even when you're podcasting for like yourself, right? You're talking to the microphone into space saying somebody's on the other end of it. And I started, because you talked about podcasting earlier. How long have you been podcasting?
About 7 years now.
So one of the really, really big shifts in my journey, both just in life, but also like in healing, was stepping into podcasting. And I started my first podcast back in 2016. And it's been like just this massive evolutionary growth that has come along the ride for me. But I have a memory where, because I grew up back in the 80s, I was born in 81, I'm 44 years old. And we used to have like these cassette tape toys where you could put in a blank cassette tape and then record into the little microphone. It was total like play school, big buttons and volume dials.
I remember
but
those.
It was a basic recorder, and I would get on that thing and have so much fun hearing my voice come out, but being so like confused by the way that it sounded. So I'm sure a lot of, because it's that whole thing where we kind of don't like the sound of our own voice, and it sounds weird to hear our voice back to us, right? But I remember being so fascinated by it. And when I started podcasting, very similarly, where I had no idea what I was doing, and immediately it was just like, in some ways, the universe was like, hey, this is what you're doing. Go do this thing now. And I'm like, cool. And I mean, there's a story behind that. That's not as like, my wife was very integral. I always choose words to say, Joseph, that I can't actually say. I don't know why they're like, say this word that you can't say. Every time I go to say this word, I can't say it. Integral, important.
Perfect. That's how you
right?
say it.
Whatever. She was key. But ever since I started podcasting, it's been this journey of really freeing up my throat, really allowing myself to speak, really hearing myself speak. It's been in some ways like this live action journal of just expression over the past almost decade, all the way up into this point. Because it's like every time I'm creating something in the last decade, there's got to be some sort of podcast in association with it. It's so funny. And but the act of speaking has been a real journey for me. And along the way, throughout that journey, my voice has been so important for so many different reasons. And I think that hearing you reflect it back to me, because people talk a lot about, sometimes people will pop into the room and talk about just like the sound of my voice is relaxing and soothing. Like I have a buddy of mine, we'll get on phone calls and he's like, dude, it's so nice to just listen to your voice sometimes. And I'm like, cool. Do you know what I mean? It's weird to me on one hand, but at the same time, it really makes me happy because what I'm hearing back is that I've loved myself enough to speak and be myself and just allow my truth and continually just express over and over and over again. So thank you.
I completely agree. I think there is a very strong connection between your voice and how you see yourself and how you experience yourself. Whenever I had a client the other day and she went, I hate the sound of my own voice. And I was like, we're going to coach on that now. There's no way you can say that. I'm like, I was like, no, we're not doing the reading yet. And, like you can't say that in a reading to a coach and be like, we're just going to leave that there. No, we're not.
Yeah. Well, that's not a big deal. We don't have to worry about that one.
Totally. I was like, no problem. But, I from my own experience, I completely understand what you're saying. And I, for a long time did not like the sound of my voice and I'd get very uncomfortable. And what's interesting is I also get people often they'll send me emails or they'll sort of tell me on TikTok, they'll say like, I love listening to you, or I find your voice very, soothing, etc. And I'm convinced a big part of that is what they're kind of similar to what you said. I think what people are responding to is the level of self-love and healing that's happened. I don't think it's not a deliberate thing. I don't think you do. I definitely don't sit there and go, how can I make myself sound a certain way? Do
you know what? It got reflected back to me recently because social media for me is just a big mirror. So it's constantly confirming and showing things for me along the way. And you just reminded me of something that I saw recently, and I have no idea what it was. Some interview somewhere where somebody was talking about these people that have basically, you're speaking from a place of love. It's the vibration and frequency of love. Because it's the thing that people are feeling soothed and relaxed and pulled and like this sound. And I can hear it from other people. Like I know what it sounds like when I hear it. I can hear it in your voice when you're talking. And it's like just this thing where you're like, oh, this person puts me at ease when I listen to them. And I want to keep listening to them because they put me at ease. And everybody that I can associate that with, throughout my life are people that I admire and feel drawn to. I had a mentor, and mentor isn't even the right word. He was a man that was in my life and was really pivotal when I was younger. And it was all during like 8, 9, 10, 11, kind of 12, 13 years old, that adolescent into teen years. And he was the father of one of my best friends. And I used to ride my bike up and around the corner and go play at their house and sleep over in the backyard, and very much like spent a lot of time at their home. And he was also a scout leader for me. And he had all of these kind of different roles and aspects that he played in my life. And even later on in life, when I was an adult, he worked at this job that I got, and he was the trainee. So I spent another week with him as an adult, and being able to, and quite literally just being around the man made you feel better. He just had this thing about him that was hard to explain, but I see it now so clearly as just he was so in love, so connected to love, just in this space of really being in love, that it felt so good to be around them. And I think it's, I mean, I think it's really, can you relate though? Like, can you see some of those people throughout your life, right?
Yeah, I think that that's a really important point. So I think so a belief I have is the right teachers and mentors and guides will come into your life at the right time for you. They're not meant to, some are not meant to stay forever. Some are meant to be maybe one video, one class. Some are meant to be a 6-week thing. Some are meant to be for years, right? It doesn't matter. The point is you'll attract them when you need them. And I think a lot of it is actually not necessarily even the technical pieces. I think it's the energy that they have. I think it's the frequency that they have. I think it's their belief in themselves that kind of can help you see things in yourself. You know, as I'm sure you have, you know, I've been through a lot of things and I've come out of it stronger and really proud of myself. And very often when I'm sort of coaching clients or giving them a reading, I blend coaching and reading. So when I say reading, I kind of mean both. I'll often sort of, you know, say things to them like, I know you can do this, or I see you as powerful. And I'm not just saying it because it sounds nice. I want to embody that energy. I want to give them that energy and sort of say to them like, I see you as powerful, or I see you as magical. And I think it's really important as well to like be open to kind of both ends of it, right? Like being open to the teachers and the mentors and the guides that are right for you, but also something I think is not talked about enough is being the mentor or the guide or the teacher for the people who need you. Now, some people listening and watching might think, I don't want to be those things. Amazing, that's fine. But you would be surprised how many people probably do look at you like that, depending on what you do, right? Like if you are, you know, a coach or a reader or a teacher, then of course you're doing that formally. But regardless of what you do, like you're always giving off an energy and you're giving off a vibration, and it's very, you know, you can sort of tell a lot from people about how they show up. So I guess my point there is just to say, yes, absolutely. I can think of multiple people that I've worked with over the last few years that have just given me so much just by being in their energy, talking to them, getting their, you know, advice, their feedback. I think that something I often do before classes or before private sessions, I'll often take like a moment and I'll just set the intention, like, may I be who they need me to be? And I don't mean that in a way like I'm performative. I mean, basically, may they like draw out of me what they need. And then I kind of just, I hope I'm saying that how I mean it. Like my intention is just that like, I am who you need me to be in that moment. So if you need to connect to me being a bit like blunt with you, but then may you get that. If you need to sort of see me as someone who gives off something else, then may you get that. And I do this in every one of my classes. I've done this for years. It just kind of came to me. I'll always say, before we start the class, I'll just say, you know, I'd like you to close your eyes and just set the intention that you get what you most need right now from this session. And I do that in my, I think podcasts, I do it in most episodes, but I do it in my private sessions for that reason, because I almost want to get out of the way and just think, may I just be who they need, and may they set that intention that that's what they get.
So good, dude. This has been so wonderful. This is like, I'm double checking the chat. Is there anything
I'm
you want to
nervous
throw
to touch
out?
it.
Yeah, you're good.
I'm actually nervous to touch, because I don't know if it's same on your phone, but our pictures are quite big, and I've got about that much of the chats. I'm only seeing like.
I've got the desktop thing, so I'm on Studio. So I've got I'm sitting in front of a TV that I've got a big old screen, and I can see the chat. So when I use my phone, it drives me bonkers because I have no idea how to use the phone. Like, people have to help me understand how to use the phone when I use this.
Sometimes, like, people ask me technical questions about things. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I can do readings for a room without even flinching, right? You could put me in a room and go do readings for the room. I wouldn't even flinch. If you said, like, set up the Zoom link, I'd be like, wait, what? I need to go on YouTube. So yeah, just some insight. But I'm on my phone. I have the ring light there, and then I have my phone stand. So all I've got is like that much. But anyway, my point is, if anybody would like to ask questions, I'm very happy to be here and chat with you more if you would like. I just can't see the questions.
We've got one here from Miyashi. Do you have any tips for someone who is struggling to be open and authentic? It's a good question.
Yes. So immediately what comes to me for you is, so I would look at, what are you afraid of, right? So this idea of being authentic and open, we can sometimes take as like vulnerability. So I'm afraid if I was myself, they would, or they wouldn't, whatever it is. So I would get kind of clear on like what you think you have to protect yourself from. I'll give you an example that we talked about earlier. I was always a little bit afraid if I tell people what I do, they'll think I'm like a bit weird. I mean, I am weird, so like now it's fine. But my point, all joking aside, like I would really get clear on like look at it directly. What am I afraid of if I am open and authentic? Then I would kind of get very practical, and I would say to myself, if I was being open and authentic now, what would that look like? Like, really, what would it look like? Would it be a practical change? Would it be something in yourself? Would it be taking action on something? And I would just start doing those things, and I would give yourself lots of love and compassion and kindness. And I'll just make up an example for you. This is not an intuitive thing. This is just an example. But like, let's say you really want to talk about your intuitive gifts, right? And you think to yourself, I want to start doing videos on that, but I'm afraid. That's okay. What I would do is create like a little special ritual for yourself. And I would think of this as like a turning point. I'm going to give myself permission to start being open and authentic, knowing I'm safe. I'm completely safe. And, I'm giving myself permission to do this. I would maybe post a video or do something that represents that openness. And I would shower myself with praise. I would post the video, and I would literally out loud say something like, I'm so proud of you for posting that video. I know how much that meant to you. Well done. I'm so proud of you. I would just give myself lots and lots and lots of self-praise. And another mindset piece I'd like to give you quickly is, the truth of the matter is, I don't know how old you are, but the truth of the matter is, you will find your people. There's a quote I love, and I want to get this framed, and it basically says, always be yourself, and then the people who are looking for you can find you. And I think that's true with everything.
I freaking love that.
So isn't it amazing? I wish I could remember who said it. Anyway, I'll try and get it and I'll send it to you. But my point is, you're asking a beautiful question. So first of all, well done for asking such a powerful question. But also, you will find your people. And I'm not saying that in a kind of like love and light, bye way. I mean, literally, you will find your people. The more I see this in my life, the more I can tell you it's true. The more you are deeply yourself and you love yourself enough to do it, just be yourself, people will come up to you in the most amazing ways. I'll give you a funny example quickly. A couple of weeks ago, my friend, for their birthday, had a sound, the sound gong, the sound baths.
Yeah.
I blanked on the name, sorry. We went on the beach up there at night, did this beautiful big sort of sound bath thing.
Oh my gosh.
it was heaven. I'll send you some videos if you want. And a little part of me, I'll be honest with you, was a bit like, people can see what we're doing. You know, like there was a little part of me that was like, anyway, last week I was in the gym and I was on one of the machines and this guy kind of just like appeared and I thought he wanted to use the machine. So I said, like, I took my earphones out and I went, do you want to use it? Like, and he went, no, I have a question. And I was thinking like, is it weird? Okay. You know, I was like, sure, what's your question? And this guy who you would look at and think was like a real gym bro, like, you know, just would not. Anyway, he went, were you doing a ceremony on the beach? And I couldn't think about what he meant. And I went, sorry, what do you mean? He was like, with the bell thing. And I had this like micro moment of wanting to go, oh, no, not me. You know, really just being, I just had this. And I went, yeah, it was a sound bath for my friend's birthday. And he looked at me and he went, could you send me some information? I would love to come to things like that. I'm discovering this part of myself. Now, in that moment, somebody you would never assume would be into those things opened their heart and came over and connected. But think about the power of that interaction. I was being myself, going to that thing, and of course being with my friends, but also like that's when the magic happens, when you are yourself. So I hope that helped.
I think those are huge. I think those are awesome. Talks with S. How do I make this step when healing has served its purpose and try to shift into expansion? I think it's kind of what we were talking about what it reminds me of is we were talking about this earlier where it's like there's spots where you have to go from no longer being in the phase of the healing, right? Not being, there's something wrong that has to be healed. And now in the phase of like, oh, now I'm creating my reality. That's a transition that you have to navigate there. Mm-hmm. And truthfully, it's like the transition spot, I think, comes up a lot of times in life where we're going from one thing to another. And oftentimes it's the unknown. We're going into an area that we haven't been before. And if you can think about just what that feels like when you're literally doing it at any given point. Nobody likes going into a dark room. That's why we have the light right by the door so that we can turn it on and see where we're going, right? Even today when it's like, oh shit, I got to go over and turn the light on and it's on the other side. When we moved to Tennessee, our house has light switches in really weird places. So in order to like turn the last light off before we go to bed, it's in the middle of the kitchen. It's in the most inconvenient spot. So we have to turn it off and then like navigate the counter and the island and the couch and the, you know, who knows what else before we get to the bedroom. And it's like every time there's a transition that you're going through in life that you can't see the other side, of course, it's going to be scary and you're going to feel stuck and you're going to feel frozen. But the trick is there's things that you're holding on to still that you can't take with you. Like I think about it from so many different metaphorical ways, but it's like you get the opportunity to cross over this new bridge from one side to the other. And in the middle is kind of like some fog and you can't quite see how long that bridge is going to be, when in reality it's just barely on the other side of the fog, but you can't tell because you can't see. And you can only bring so much with you when you cross over this bridge. So take stock in what do you actually want to bring with you, because you're still in the act of healing. You're still in the act of evolving is another way to look at it. And if you want to really step forth into the expansion, there's going to be components of your past that you're still holding on to, that if you really take stock and reflect, you'll be able to let those things go. Because again, you got this bridge that you got to cross and you can't bring all your shit. So if you're ready to let go of this mentality and thought and program that you have about yourself, that there's something wrong with you, maybe get excited about on the other side of that bridge is the realization that, oh, wait, you're worthy of everything and there's nothing wrong with you. And now you get to create all sorts of beautiful things for yourself because you're worthy of it.
That's so beautiful. And I feel like there's got to be some spiritual lesson to that light being in the middle of your kitchen. There's got to be something there. That I feel like, yeah, one of your spirit guides is like, I got this.
Right.
There's something magical there. I would love to, if I may add to that, I think that is so gorgeous what you said about understanding the parts that serve you. Like what comes to me for this person is just to say, acknowledge yourself and praise yourself for how far you've come, for how well you've done. Acknowledge the things that, you know, did serve you for so long to get you to this point. And then what I would do is I would get very clear on what no longer serves you. For example, maybe you've been in survival mode or fight or flight, or you've been hypervigilant, or whatever it is. I'm not going to go there, but like whatever it is. And then I would make a ritual out of it, right? You know, you can write things on a piece of paper and safely burn them. You could bathe in the ocean or have a cleansing bath. You know, you could light a candle. There's lots of things you can do. But I would, you know, I get this very strong intuitive feeling to say to you, I would get excited about this new chapter. I would give the chapter a name. What's the name of the chapter? I would think about the theme of that chapter, and I would make a vision board. I would literally make a vision board for this new chapter of your life, this new phase of your life. So let's say that you've been, you know, focusing a lot on being more confident, right? I have a whole theory about why that's unhealthy, but anyway, like, right? Like, what does it even mean? But let's say that you've been for a long time thinking, I'm working on my confidence. Well, let's say the next phase is you being the confident. It's like, get out of the wanting of it and get into the being of it. So you could make a vision board about, like, what does confident me do? Where does confident me go? You know, like, get practical. What things are you putting off doing because you don't feel confident enough? I'll give you an example. Maybe it's like, I've never done my first TikTok live. You say, great, now it's time for me to live into that. So make a vision board, come up with, you know, what no longer serves you, let that go. And then I would literally give yourself a theme for this new chapter in your life. It could be fun, it could be, you know, adventure, anything. But, you know, get excited about this new, like, phase of your life and map out what it looks like, rather than just, you know, because I think it's easy to say, oh, I'm ready for a new chapter, right? But, like, what does that mean? So get practical, make a vision board, write some fresh goals down.
So all this stuff about these cards for me this year was channeled information that I received, and then jumped on TikTok and started reading these cards. But you were talking about, like, a chapter or a phase of life. That's what the 10 is. So the 10 represents a chapter or phase of life that you've been in, and each suit has a different theme. And so, like, the theme of, like, healing oftentimes is 10 of shadows, which is what spades are, because it is like survival. It's really being stuck in the learning about yourself and making the same mistakes and trying to, like, continually evolve and shift and change, and then moving into the different kind of phase of life. And like, the spot where you're at, it feels like, is where you're wanting to feel the expansion. Right? You've done enough healing to get to this spot where it's like, okay, now I want to step into this space where it starts to expand. And that's like 10 of hearts energy. That's really being in your heart. That's the whole thing, is like, now's the time to wholeheartedly address, like, the bridge metaphor that I used earlier. Truthfully, it's like you're leaving this past behind and crossing over into unconditional love. You're crossing over into your heart now. So everything has to come through that lens and through that perspective of, what do you love and what does feel good? You have to go towards your heart now, rather than fear and survival and doubt and all those other things. That's the stuff that you gotta let go of. This is so fun, dude.
I've decided that we should do this more. This is great. I love this. You know, it's interesting because there's a card in the tarot. There's the Four of Pentacles. And it shows a person that's covering their heart with a pentacle or a coin. They have one on their head and they have one under each foot. And I often say in readings, that's about balancing your head and your heart. And I think that's exactly what you just said. Like, it's about coming out of your head and living into this new chapter. I have a theory that most people are, I call it updating your inner software. Most people are running an old version of themselves from 5-10 years ago that's simply not true anymore. And I can tell you this, like, I've had clients, and they won't mind me sharing this because I've asked if I can, you know, just put that out there. But I've had clients who are extremely wealthy people, like very, very, very wealthy, say to me, I am still afraid I'll lose it tomorrow. or I'm afraid if I relax too much, it'll be taken away. And of course, we'll coach on that, or we'll do some readings and we'll look into like how we can shift that. But the point is, it's never really about the external. It's always about your relationship with yourself and the story that you tell yourself. I can think of maybe 3 or 4 readings I've done this week where I've said to the client, I don't think this is really about this situation. I think this is about something else for you. Like, let's look at what that could be. And, you know, it's about, I think, sometimes doing that for yourself and saying, is the program I'm running now actually serving where I want to go? Or am I kind of rehearsing an old version of myself?
Yeah, those programs, like I think I was talking about, I don't remember when I was talking about that, whether it was at the very beginning or not, but for me, that was like the really, really, really big shift was when I was recognizing I'd been operating off of like not just 5-10 years ago, but like inception programs that I had zero awareness of, things directly surrounding like my self-worth. Truthfully, I think we all have a base program, like in some ways that we are unlovable because there's this illusion of separation from love. Because truthfully, it's like, I don't remember where this came recently, but this was in my space recently where it was like, if unconditional love is so good and that's where we come from, what the hell are we doing here? Why would we come to this experience and then try to get to that experience, right? It doesn't make sense that this is the place that we're trying to get to, that is all about love and light and heaven and everything's wonderful and great. And we were there already, but then we came, it doesn't make sense. Why would we come here? There must be something wrong with me. I must have been cast out. I must have been unworthy of that place that is everything that is good and wonderful and amazing, right? So like this base program that we're just unworthy in some ways. And that for me, at the end of the day, was like the really big hump that I eventually had to get over. And once I crossed over that spot where it was like, oh, bullshit, I'm worthy of love. I'm worthy of all of it. I'm worthy of unconditional love. And I became like my biggest protector, where it was like there was nobody or anything else in my life that was ever going to get in the way of me and that unconditional love. So if you were going to somehow make me feel like I wasn't worthy or treat me in ways that it made me feel, all of these things about, hey, I'm choosing now who I'm around. I'm choosing now how I'm living. I'm choosing now how I'm treating myself because I'm actually worthy of all of that love.
And more.
And more. Exactly.
That's so beautiful. You know, I think one of the most healing things you can do for yourself is to give yourself permission to just be unavailable for anything that is beneath your level of self-worth. I have a belief that you will always manifest in accordance to your level of self-worth. So the key is to always go back to self-worth, self-respect, self-love. And you have to be just unavailable for anything that is not a match for that. Like, for example, let's say a client wants to sort of manifest a new relationship and they go, what styles can we do? I will always say, let's do a reading and look at what's going on there for you and where to work on first. And here's the thing, it's like you see a lot of people online talking about like how to make sure that, like if it's, I'm trying to not make it gender specific, but you'll see stuff like that will say how to receive princess treatment, right? Mm-hmm, how to make sure like the man, I always say to my amazing women clients, I'll say, but you know that starts with you giving yourself princess treatment. You being a princess does not depend on how he treats you. You should be already doing that for yourself so that you are so uninterested in anything that doesn't match your like, for example, if you're treating yourself like a queen or a king, whatever, and you're treating yourself beautifully and you're giving yourself this gorgeous life, you just wouldn't even entertain anyone who comes in there, would you? Because you're going to be like, dude, if I'm giving myself this, like, you need to be at least there or there. So that's, you know,
right, I think there is such a huge thing to just highlight what you just explained. If I'm loving myself here, you got to meet me there. And if you're not, sorry, right?
Not sorry.
Exactly.
Not sorry.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sometimes I say that to people as a joke. I'll be like, I'm sorry to say, well, actually, I'm not sorry.
Yes.
You know, exactly. I think there's a little bit of magic that just happened because we were joking, but that's very true, right? Like, don't be sorry about it. You have nothing to apologize for. Having self-respect, self-worth, boundaries, protecting your energy, you have nothing to apologize for. And actually, there's a card in the tarot, there's the Queen of Swords. One of the messages of the Queen of Swords is boundaries and standards and like protecting your energy. And I'll always say to clients, like, Queen of Swords energy right now, you don't owe anyone like dropping your standards or lowering your self-worth for. Nobody is worth that, okay? And actually it's about you first giving yourself what you want, and then life will, the external will always catch up. It might sound a bit cliche, but it's true. Because let's take a relationship, right? If you speak badly to yourself, you don't show up for yourself, you're kind of mean to yourself, a little bit rude to yourself, right? And you never do anything nice for yourself, you are going to give a person externally all the power. You can make me feel good, or you can make me not feel good. And then I'm going to be mad at you, and then I'm going to be like this, and then whatever. If you're already, I'm going to use some very practical examples, but if you are already taking yourself for beautiful dates out, you're already buying yourself lovely things, you're already showering yourself with love and praise every day, and honoring yourself and treating yourself so well, if someone comes in and doesn't, you're going to be like, oh, bless you, no thanks. Like, you're not even going to be on that frequency. And
it gets talked about frequency a lot too. Like, you'll hear it in different verbiage where it's like your vibration is so high that people either, like, the people that can't meet you there, you won't even like it, they they bounce off of you. You're at such a different frequency and vibration, and I love.
Well, they'll call you difficult.
Exactly.
You know what I love is sometimes I have a joke that I'll say with people. If people say that, like, oh, you're difficult, you can say, for people like you, I am. That's okay. I'm sure you probably find me very difficult. That's okay. Like, you can make it cheeky, but you can be like, I am. Or if people say, oh, they're really high maintenance. For your standards, yes, I am. Like, that's okay. Like, if you have such low standards, I probably am too much high standards for you. That's fine.
What's coming up for you, man? Is there anything you want to throw out? Anything you want to promote?
In terms of like what's coming up, just what a pleasure this conversation is. I really liked you when we connected before and we chatted. I thought you were really interesting and have this like beautiful energy. And like I said, I always really love your videos, but what a pleasure this conversation has been. And it's funny because I'll tell you something. Normally, whenever I've done these in the past, I'll email and be like, should we discuss questions? Should we discuss this? Should we get links together? And when you and I chatted and you were like, should we just jump in? I kind of had this feeling of like, I'm really looking forward to what's going to come out of this. So thank you to you. I've really enjoyed meeting you properly. And thanks to everyone who's watching. In terms of like anything to promote, I'm opening up at the moment enrollment for my program, which is called the Confident Reader Mastermind. If you like this kind of content, you like what I'm talking about, and you'd love to learn about how to read tarot with confidence and really build your skills as a reader, definitely feel free to reach out. I'm happy to send you information. There's also info on my TikTok, in my podcast, and also the link in my bio as well.
So awesome. It sounds like really an opportunity to like it, because you were talking about it too, that it's like going into the heart and really connecting and like understanding that if you're not connected. And that's the other thing too, is like I spoke about people coming up and like, you've got to be in the space of your heart when you're in this space. Because if you're not, then you're not going to receive the thing that you need to receive. And it's the same thing on the opposite end of the spectrum. Like if I'm not in my heart, then it's obvious. Do you know what I mean?
It's really obvious. I always talk a lot about like self-trust and the important. I actually did a podcast episode this week about self-trust and how to build it. And I think the reason it's so important is one of the phrases I use in my program is the things you will learn here are not just going to help you give great readings. They're going to empower the rest of your life for the rest of your life. Because when you're in touch with your intuition and your abilities, and you come from that place of self-respect, you navigate situations in your daily life differently. You respond to things differently. you just are different in your life because you trust yourself and you trust your intuition and the magic that's within you. So I think that's the most important thing to do, is to always bring it back to self-trust, self-love, and then build from there.
It's it's literally how you create your dream life. Like it is.
Without it, what's the point?
It's just bananas.
But literally, what's the point?
Right?
You know, because if you, no, but literally, I want to really like emphasize this. What is the point otherwise? If you don't like yourself, you don't feel good about yourself, it doesn't matter, does it? Because then you can have anything physical, but you're not going to feel good. So that's like saying, you know, someone's going to bring you your favorite food, but you can't taste anything because, you know, God forbid you know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's all about how you feel about yourself and loving yourself enough to give yourself the gift of like, even some days on a morning, I'll just say to myself, like, what do you need right now? Like, what do you need to start today well? And it might be a coffee, it might be something else, but like little moments like that where you really acknowledge what you need and give it to yourself is also how you build self-trust, because you're showing yourself, I'm a safe person for myself.
I love it, man. This has been amazing.
Such a pleasure. Thank you.
We're definitely going to do this some more because I've had such a good time and I feel like we just connect so beautifully and so well. And I'm sure people have enjoyed this. If you've caught portions of this along the way and you want to see the whole thing, full episodes of this are over on YouTube. So if you missed some of this, it'll be up next week and all those links are in my profile. Make sure you're going and following Joseph. I mean, I cannot express how I knew, like, the way that I show, like, this is my process for kind of like deciding who I'd like to talk to on the podcast is I'll get into the zone where I'm just kind of like, okay, I start scrolling, right? And I just feel kind of like who I feel connected to and who interests and kind of just like who you get that pulled to. And when you start showing up, I'm just like, well, shit. Immediately, I was so excited to connect with you, man. It just felt so good being in your room, listening to you, hearing you speak, seeing what you do. So being able to fully flesh this out and get to learn so much more about you. Like, again, I'm just like, I feel so grateful because I get to know so much more about you. Like, this has just been so awesome.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. And, you know, just to say about like the live room you came into, I'm so grateful. I have amazing people that come to those lives, obviously you being one of them, but it's magical. So thank you very much to you for having me. And thanks to everyone who's been watching. It's been such a pleasure.
So cool. Well, have a good evening, brother.
You too. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. We'll
Bye,
see
everyone.
everybody later.